and welcome to the Leading with Lean podcast. My name's Philip Holt, author of Leading with Lean, The Simplicity of Lean, and Leading Lean by Living Lean. And in this podcast, I narrate all three of my books, chapter by chapter, in which I share with you my over 30 years of experience as a lean leader across many companies globally. Leading with Lean, Chapter 13, The Business Excellence Competition. The Philips Excellence Competition. In September 2015, I completed 10 years working for Royal Philips, which gave me pause to reflect on some fantastic experiences and shared achievements during this time. However, despite the many sources of pride that I have as a team member of Philips, one of the most engaging is the Philips Excellence Competition. Whilst there are many companies that celebrate the success of their business excellence initiatives, Philips must surely be one of an elite club of organisations who, on an annual basis, invest in a global celebration of their team members' achievements. It's called the Philips Excellence Competition, and it's open to all of the employees across the globe. Although it is a competition and does bring out the competitive nature of the Philips team members, the real magic of the Philips Excellence Competition is the opportunity to engage all employees in the important matter of excellence. The competition runs company-wide across the whole value chain and its enabling functions, from our teams in research all the way through to our after-sales care. The competition celebrates the essence of Philips delivering innovation that matters to you, its customers, and ensures that the best ideas are not only rewarded, but are shared across the whole of the Philips world. That year's competition brought those teams who had beaten the best of their market and region and earned the right to compete at the global level to Shanghai. It was a cohort of the best within Philips and was judged by the senior leadership of Royal Philips, including the then CEO, Frans van Houten. The commitment of the senior leadership is essential to the success of a programme such as this, and Royal Philips employees are fortunate that their leadership have maintained that commitment for many years and, in the past few years, have seen a redoubling of the focus. Why you need a business excellence competition? Although many people may like the idea of business excellence competition, one of the challenges that you will have is convincing others, particularly those in the leadership who have to pay for it and sanction the investment of time that team members will make in it. This won't be easy, as the business case is not an easy one to create. However, make it must be, and so here are some tips to make it happen. Number 1, make approval of and lobbying for the business excellence competition a key element of the change and communication strategy. Number 2, develop the business case through research of other companies' approaches, understanding clearly the costs and both the tangible and intangible benefits that they derive. Number 3, build a wide support base across the business, engaging with senior leaders and influencers across the functions and geography as applicable. Number 4, be prepared to start small, either in geography or function, to pilot and showcase the approach. Number 5, make replication a core element of the competition and put in place replication targets with a focus on quality, service, cost, and people engagement as the metrics. Number 6, determine clear criteria for the competition, which are firmly linked to the strategy of the business, with a theme that resonates with the current focus, for example, zero defects or customer excellence. And then number 7, gain sponsorship at the highest level possible and make it as much as possible theirs. Fundamentally, a successful lean transformation needs a business excellence competition as a key element of its change management, utilising the lean transformation to celebrate success, rewarding and recognising those teams that are pioneering the approach and mindset, whilst ensuring that the Yokoten learning, knowledge sharing and transfer is supported. By definition, the high-profile parts of the competition may gain the most attention, but the most important element of the business excellence competition is that it forms a continuous process throughout each year and across the years, rather than becoming a distinct set of events. This is why it is so important and why we need it as an enabler of our lean transformation. It brings together the improvement activities of our team members from across the organisation. It's not only relevant to large organisations such as Philips, but also to smaller single-site locations where we can still recognise, reward and replicate our best improvement activity on a more modest scale. Whilst it is true that large organisations suffer chronically from a lack of communication and knowledge sharing due to geography, functional silos and scale, a team only needs to get beyond a dozen or so people before the barriers of knowledge sharing are erected. Setting up the business excellence competition. Once the approval has been granted, the real hard work begins as the lean leader and the organising team devise, create and deploy the competition. This requires some thought, and it is important that the competition is reflective of the size of the organisation, its history and culture, and its vision and mission. While showing respect for the past, it must reflect what the organisation wants to be and therefore needs to embody the future. I've seen a number of approaches, and although there are no clear right or wrong approach, some of the key elements of a successful business excellence competition are: number one, the competition can begin as a pilot in a part of the business, but it must quickly become a company-wide initiative. Number two, it must have top management sponsorship and engagement with the leadership, preferably the owner, CEO or managing director, and their leadership in attendance and active on the panel of jurors. Number three, the process should be continuous, which each year's competition simply follow on from the previous one. Continuous improvement initiatives that are entered into the competition are just that, continuous and driven by business need, not the competition. Number four, to support this, each cycle of the business excellence competition will start immediately after the final of the last, ensuring that the entrants see clearly that it is an ongoing activity and not an event triggered by a milestone. Replication must feature prominently in the competition, with all entrants expected to promote and execute replication, with follow-up and a prominent award for the best replication. The final must have some element of razzmatazz and ceremony around it, which will be dependent upon the size and culture of the organisation. It must feel like a privilege to be a part of the business excellence competition and highly desirable to all employees. And then number seven, the event must be managed successfully each time and publicised heavily, utilising the change and communication plan. The lean leader will put together an organising committee made up of team members from around the organisation, ensuring that it is representative and negotiate a budget sufficient to meet the objectives of the competition on the scale agreed. It is very important that the budget limit is respected by the committee, and therefore strict management of expenditure is required. The committee will spend time canvassing opinion from across the organisation on expectations and requirements, but will also take best practice from external organisations and will realise that the vision for the lean transformation means that a large number of the people that they are canvassing will currently be unconsciously incompetent, and so they must be careful to listen to the intent of their responses rather than the specifics. It is important that the business excellence competition represents how things will be done in the future and not how they were done in the past. The organisation of the business excellence competition will need a significant investment of time, regardless of its scale. An appropriately resourced team will be required. In an organisation of any significant scale, it is likely that a full-time lead will be necessary, but it is essential that this is not someone who is pulled off the lean transformation, as that is simply redeploying resources away from the overall programme. Whilst the person may be part of the business excellence team, see chapter 14, they have the specific remit to manage the delivery of the business excellence competition. They will coordinate a team of people who are working on the BEC on a part-time basis, and so it's important, at a minimum, to have the lead of the competition fully dedicated. The cost should be a transparent element of the BEC budget without any of the costs hidden. The team will meet regularly and follow good project management practice, establishing a BEC charter, which must be fully agreed by the stakeholders before proceeding and must define the reason for the BEC, its objectives, budget and governance. The objectives will be described with a mix of hard targets around quality, service and cost improvements, and soft targets, which include things such as employee engagement and Kaizen implementation. Remember that the BEC isn't a discrete event, and therefore the objectives will be based on its overall impact on the organisation and not only the impact directly visible in the competition events themselves, and will be multi-year, clearly linked to the organisation's hosting. As lean thinking will be applied to the BEC and its organisation, a PDCA plan approach will be built into the organisation of the competition, ensuring that the project management and metrics are on track and, where not, problem solving is executed. The methodology and activities required to execute the business excellence competition will, naturally, be captured in standardised work, with clear standard operating procedures and work instructions in place in order that the team is able to deploy in a standardised and effective manner, even in a global organisation with multiple locations across geographies. This standardised work will also facilitate the handover and knowledge transfer as team members rotate into and out of the organising team and across the years. The Business Excellence Competition Annual Cycle. A typical BEC annual cycle will begin at an appropriate time of the year, which could coincide with the organisation's financial year, but is most appropriately designed to facilitate the activist engagement of the senior leadership. The finals should therefore be scheduled at a time of the year when the structured demands on them, such as annual financial reporting to the markets, are at their least. To illustrate what the cycle would look like, let's take an enterprise that has multiple locations across the Asian, Latin American, North American and EMEA regions. They have set the start and end point of the cycle in June, as this is sufficiently after the end of their financial year, which runs from January to December, and before the summer holiday period, to allow for both team members and senior leadership's involvement in the regional and global finals. They therefore begin the cycle in June with the launch of the BEC and a message from their CEO. The teams around the world start to prepare their submissions, showcasing their achievements in a standardised format and uploading them into the BEC database, which could be SharePoint or some other global collaboration tool. If this was a very mature organisation, the database would already be populated with these best practices and knowledge sharing as part of the standard practice for all improvement projects and Kaizen events, and therefore the teams would simply be deciding upon which of the projects they would enter into the competition. This process runs for around 4 months, during which time the locations determine which of their entrants will progress to the market and country finals and prepare the teams for success in those competitions. Some of the locations are a single site, for example factories of hundreds of team members, whilst other locations are a combination of multiple sites of a few dozen people each. The locations have been set up dependent upon their scale and type of activity. For example, with R&D or sales offices coalesce to provide sufficient scale. Where a market or country has limited activity, such as where there are only sales activities, the local selection and market or country finals are combined to create sufficient scale of competition. Around October to December, the market and country finals take place and the selection of the entrants for the regional finals is made. Even within a market or country, the travel requirements may be high and the budget under pressure, so communication technology and virtual finals are used in many cases. To facilitate this, a standardised approach is taken and short videos created ahead of the finals to allow the jurors to make the selection in as unbiased a manner as possible. Based on the selection of the market and country final winners, the regional finals are undertaken in January to March with a big focus on the involvement of the senior leadership. This means that the most senior leaders in each region, plus some global leaders, are represented on the juries and have made their attendance a high priority. Whilst there will always be some customer-focused activity that causes one or two of the senior leaders to be unavailable, the majority have planned ahead for the event and only true emergencies get in the way of their attendance. By the end of the March period, the regional finals are completed and the global finalists confirmed. By June, the global finals are in full swing, with the CEO and the leadership team a key part of the jury. Winners are selected for each of the criteria and celebrations are held for the best winners. It's an important moment in the organisation's annual cycle. The above process can be summarised as follows. June, launch of the BEC annual cycle. June to October, local selection. October to December, market/country finals. January to March, regional finals. And June, global final. The previous example of a global organisation might risk giving the impression that a BEC is only for a large organisation, but this is not the message that I would want the reader to take from this. Ultimately, there should be a final and, in terms of size, I would recommend around 20 teams. This means that most organisations beyond the size of a small family business can run a BEC. The question is really what the scale of it would be. This means that whilst an organisation of 20,000 people might have local selection, country or market, regional and global finals, a single-site enterprise of 100 people might have a single BEC final. The scale itself doesn't matter. What matters is the engagement of all of the team members. Regardless of the scale of the organisation and the number of rounds, One thing that is extremely important is that at the end of each cycle, there is some form of celebration for the organising team, as they will have been working extremely hard to make it all happen, and will probably have been somewhat anonymous, as the participating teams have taken the limelight. It's therefore essential that they are recognised for their great work and thanked for the effort that they have made. Another consideration for most organisations with a global footprint is the language that will be used in the competition. For the local competition rounds, the local language can be used, but possibly at the market level, where a market consists of more than one country, and certainly at the regional and global level, a lingua franca, common language, will be required. For most global organisations, this will be English, and for those participating working in global functions or at a certain level in their enterprise, English will be something that they can use without too many problems. In fact, their improvement team may consist of multiple language speakers, and they may already be working in English on a daily basis. However, for an organisation with a lot of people in more manual and locally focused roles, particularly where a lot of the team members are in manufacturing or supply chain and logistics centres, careful consideration must be given to, number one, how the sharing of knowledge is managed to ensure that the improvement efforts of a team in, for example, a factory in China can be shared effectively in a factory in Hungary. This will require the solid use of visual management and a global coding system so that improvements in a certain element of work, for example spot welding, may be found and utilised regardless of location and local language. Number two, when it comes to participation in the BEC, it's important to answer the question of how those team members not fluent in the lingua franca can participate. This will mean that some team members of those teams that have made it through to the global finals get some additional language training or that an interpreter is made available. Personally, I've seen team members from across the world present at the global finals when it has been their first time overseas and presenting in English. It's humbling to see the dedication and commitment that they put into doing this. This effort must be reciprocated by the organising committee in ensuring that native speaker teams do not have an advantage in the scoring over non-native speakers. The jurors, the awards and the selection criteria. As discussed, there must be senior leadership participation in the BEC, and their activism as members of the juries is a fantastic way to secure it. It's important to gain a good cross-section of leadership involvement with the CEO, managing director or owner and the direct leadership team in at least the global final, but as early as possible, and the local and regional leadership involved during the appropriate stages. It's also very important to bring in a good cross-section of functions to avoid bias towards or against certain functions. It's amazing to experience the role of being a juror on a BEC panel, and everyone who I've ever spoken to afterwards has commented enthusiastically about how rewarding they found it. It's not unusual for jurors at Philips to have been on multiple juries over the years. It's always difficult for anyone, particularly senior leaders, to invest the time, but the return on that investment is immense in terms of the engagement that they're able to make with the team members and the learning that they gain. In terms of the awards for the teams, they must be consistent throughout each stage of the competition, and the winners of each stage should progress against the same criteria. The awards can be selected by the organisation based upon its own particular strategic and transformation goals, but some examples are: Hi, Philip here. Sorry to interrupt the narration of this particular chapter, but I just wanted to remind you that all of my personal profits from the books go to charity. So if you would like to buy a book, it would really be helpful. Otherwise, if you feel that the podcast is sufficient, then please feel free to make a donation to my current charity, which is Women's Aid. It's a great charity which helps to stop domestic violence for women and children. Thank you. Number 1, overall winner. Number 2, replication award, as discussed earlier. Number 3, quality, such as 0 defects, net promoter score improvement, etc. Number 4, innovation, e.g. best new product, consumer desirability, etc. And number 5, growth, sales revenue increase. It is important that the awards are meaningful within the organisation and that it is clear that the winners of the awards have had a tangible and measurable positive impact on the business. In some cases, it may be relevant to have awards for each division or sector of a company, although this should only be encouraged where there is a true reason for it. For example, if one division is fundamentally less excitingly innovative and therefore its teams might struggle to compete against other divisions which are more cutting edge in their innovation. Nevertheless, In my experience, a choice of separate awards for each division is usually political in nature rather than for good competitive reasons. I would therefore encourage the reader to focus on developing and executing a BEC that is well enough designed with awards relevant to the total organisation's strategic objectives and a set of selection criteria and a jury system that is beyond reproach, so that in the event of a division winning more than its mathematical share of awards, there can be no doubt that it is well deserved. In order that the impact is credible and the assessment of all participants fair, clear criteria must be in place that can be applied evenly by all jurors. This is an important role of the organising team, and the lean leader must ensure that the ample thought and preparation is put into setting them and adequate training of the jurors undertaken. To ensure that the application is as even as possible, at least at the global and regional finals, members of the organising team will provide support in training and aligning the teams, and a form of calibration will be applied to ensure that the final decision can be made with confidence. During each competition event, the participating teams will know what the general criteria are that they will be measured against, but will not be provided with the specific scoring criteria, as it is important that they are not enabled to play the competition specifically to the criteria. To avoid this, and also to ensure that the specific theme of the organisation that year is supported, it can be useful to modify the scoring criteria on an annual basis, providing an element of mystery for the participating teams and encouraging them to focus purely on their improvement activity, the showcasing of their approach and its business impact. Inevitably, those teams that come from a sales or marketing background will typically be better at pitching during the competition, but to avoid form overshadowing content, the jurors and the organisers should focus on ensuring that they identify clear proof points to support their scoring for each team and that the calibration is as dispassionate as possible in its assessment. Additionally, those teams who have a cross-functional composition overall and in their representation at competition, in cases where the team was too large for all members to participate, should be rewarded as part of the criteria. This will encourage both cross-functional teamwork and improvement projects and representation at the competition events. As mentioned earlier, language is also a consideration for the criteria, and it is important that the teams are both encouraged to be as visual as possible in their presentations, negating the impact of language, and also that the scoring criteria and juror approach takes the challenges of language into consideration and avoids an unfair advantage for the native speakers. This is not easy, of course, but it is possible if the right planning is applied, as it is considered in the briefing of the jurors and the calibration accounts for it. Getting teams engaged in the business excellence competition. It is hopefully clear by now that the business excellence competition is central to the engagement of the team members with the lean transformation, and that its success is measured ultimately by the level of that engagement. The vision must be that the team members will continuously share the knowledge created during their continuous improvement activities, and that the BEC will simply be a celebration of this. However, to get to that point takes a lot of hard work, so the lean leader must ensure that the BEC is highly valued by the team members. If the BEC is seen only as a management requirement, with participation driven hard by the leadership, it might have a certain appeal and be marketable, but it will not resonate with the team members, and its potential for business impact will remain unrealised. However, where instead it is simply an element of the learning organisation that is being created through the lean transformation, it will begin to have a deep and meaningful impact on the enterprise. Fundamental to this is that each BEC interaction is a celebration of the organisation's continuous improvement activity. Where projects and Kaizen events are implemented, the local leadership use the competition to ensure that these efforts are celebrated and that the teams are encouraged and coached into recording and sharing the benefit across the organisation. Equally at the finals, the BEC allows the organising team and the leadership to publicise and celebrate the recognition. Whilst the recognition of those teams and team members who have made a difference is essential, employees will really engage with the BEC and the learning organisation that it helps to create when two components are in place. Number one, a knowledge system that benefits them with quick and easy access to best practices and learning, one which makes the job easier to do and improve. And two, a compulsion to participate through continuous improvement, daily Kaizen, the use and maintenance of standards, and the sharing of improvement activity being a requirement of the job. In essence, we need the carrot and the stick, whereby the first component is one which provides a clear, tangible benefit to the team members, whilst the second is a compulsion or requirement that the lean business system must impose. The checking of adherence will be part of the Leadership Commission Chapter 9, and is part of the gentle reinforcement of standards and requirements that keeps the lean business system intact. A critical component of the jury criteria, central to the lean transformation, is the behaviour that the organisation wishes to see modelled. The BEC is a fantastic platform for celebrating the role models of these behaviours. However, it is generally good practice not to have awards which are specifically for the behaviours themselves, but instead embed the modelling of behaviours within the award criteria. By doing so, the lean leader, the BEC organisers, and the leadership can ensure that the teams that win are not only those that made the best business impact, the what, but also achieved it in the best way, the how. This aligns perfectly with lean thinking and the way that we want to deploy our lean transformation. And what you'll see is the 2x2 matrix in the book, which shows on the x-axis the what, the results, from bad to good, and then on the y-axis the how, the behaviour, from non-role model to role model. And the 4 quadrants that creates are in the bottom left failure, bottom right unsustainable, top right lean thinking, and top left false start. The behaviours that the organisation chooses will be those most appropriate to the culture that it's trying to create. Nevertheless, it's essential that they are behaviours that support lean thinking and the lean management principles or similar guidelines are a great proxy for the behaviours that we would like to see in an organisation. Again, it may be that the business wants to focus on a subset which changes from year to year. While a long-term focus on purpose could be common across the years, other aspects might be rotated depending on the view of the focus required in the organisation. The results of the business excellence competition. It has hopefully become clear in the course of this chapter that a business excellence competition brings a number of advantages to an organisation, both tangible and intangible. However, it's important that we are able to measure both and show the business case for the BEC. This is an important role for the lean leader. The typical metrics are very similar, unsurprisingly, to that of the business itself. We would expect to measure the people, safety, quality, service, and cost improvements driven by the BEC, plus the degree of replication delivered. These could look something like the following. Number 1, people. Number of Kaizen implemented per employee, preferably with a hard saving associated with it. Employee engagement score, NPS, Net Promoter Score, of the BEC. Number 2, safety. Number of safety Kaizen implemented per employee, safety improvement year on year. Quality. Number 3. Quality improvement year on year with field call rate, fall-off rate, or other relevant quality measurement. Number 4, service. Delivery performance with confirmed line item performance, requested line item performance, or other relevant measure for industry, and relevant service metrics for non-manufacturing parts of the business, for example, new product introduction to plan. Number 5, cost. Productivity and inventory improvement measures should be used as relevant to the business, but should focus as much as possible on hard savings, those which really impact the P&L, bottom line, or balance sheet. Number 6, replication. This is probably the most important for the BEC, as it should be a measure of the impact of replication on the first 5 metrics, measuring how much of the result was driven by replication from one location or area of the business to another. Where applicable and possible, the above should measure the difference in the metrics between those locations engaged with the BEC and those not, to try to differentiate and demonstrate the impact of the BEC. However, the caveat is that this should not be undertaken if the cost of measurement is too great. There will always be some degree of debate as to whether the improvements would have happened regardless of the BEC, but it is for the lean leader to make as strong and compelling a case as possible, and for the senior leadership to make a decision and sponsor the business excellence competition on the strength of that business case. This is where the engagement and activism of the leadership in the business excellence competition is so important, as they will witness and feel the less tangible benefits, which should augment the measurable metrics and allow them to make a decision based upon a rounded view. For their part, the lean leader will be focused on ensuring that, in alignment with the overall lean transformation, replication becomes a natural part of the team members' work, supporting standardisation and supported by the Leadership Commission. Business excellence is a vision that many organisations strive for, and a business excellence competition is central to it, forming a critical success factor in its attainment. Just as at Royal Philips, it can be something that all team members can be proud of and aspire to participate in and to be part of a winning team.